Hello, my friends. I'm Don Chapman. It's my privilege to host Origins, and it's great to have you with us today. You know, Origins is a forum where we use the evidence of science to validate the truth of creation. We have a tremendous guest with us today. His name is Dr. Larry Vardaman, and he is the coordinator, the research coordinator, and the chairman of the Astrogeophysics Department at the Institute for Creation Research. Do I have that right?
That's right.
Well, it's so good to have you here, Dr.
you.
Vardaman, today. Now, we've been doing a series of presentations on Origins based on the findings of the RATE group, RATE standing for radioisotopes and the age of the Earth, and exciting, dynamic findings that we have. And today we're going to talk about Isochron discordance. Did I get that right?
That's right.
Now, I have to tell you, my mother never taught me what that meant, so you're going to have to help us. What are those?
Okay, let's unpack that a little bit.
All right.
An isochron means the same age.
Okay.
And actually, isochron is a technique for estimating the age of a rock based upon how you plot the data and some assumptions that you apply to it. So basically, it's a technique for estimating age. Discordance means that it's out of agreement, or there's a discard. And so we're going to talk about the differences between different methods for estimating the age of rocks and how they differ or disagree.
We're looking at rocks today, and when we have different methods of measuring the date or the age of those rocks, there is discord. There is a different, depending on the method you use, you get different answers. Is that right?
Right. Everybody's heard of uranium-lead, but there are at least 3 other major techniques for dating rocks: samarium, neodymium, potassium, argon, all kinds of techniques. There's 4 particular ones we're going to talk about today, and they have completely different estimates for the age of a particular rock, and the materials that are used to estimate come out of exactly the same rock, but they get different ages.
So you could take the same rock, use the 4 different methods, and come up with 4 different answers.
Exactly, and we're going to show that today.
All right, and all of this is because we're interested in this phrase, thousands, not billions. That's a very loaded phrase, isn't it?
Yes. From the results that we have from the RATE project, we found 3 basic results that indicate that the Earth is not billions of years old, but it's in fact only thousands, which is in agreement with Scripture, which was really an exciting result in itself. But there were other things to the RATE project, such as isochron discordance, that told us there's something wrong with the conventional method as well.
For evolution to work, you need billions of years. The Bible seems to indicate, I think rather clearly, that the Earth is young. And it seems to me that this then becomes a sentinel point. Whoever proves they're right on this one's going to win the creation-evolution debate.
Right. And we've made major progress in being able to show those problems.
Right.
And in presenting this information to the conventional scientific community, they don't have a good response for many of these problems we pointed out.
And what our show is about today primarily is this discordance shows that there is a tremendous lack of accuracy in the dating methods used by the evolutionists. Is that fair to say?
That's right. And in addition to just criticizing the conventional technique, we have offered positive evidence that points to a young Earth, not just criticizing the standard technique.
Right. There's something wrong here, and this certainly is going to help us do that.
That's right.
Well, I'm anxious to see what you have for us, so if you wouldn't mind going up to the screen, we'd love to have you share some of your insight.
Okay, be glad to do that, Don. I want to start with a little bit of a discussion of where we collected the samples that we were dealing with. First, you have to go out in the field and collect rock samples to analyze, and we spent a lot of time in Grand Canyon. Dr. Steve Austin, who is the primary scientist in this area, geologist at ICR, has probably spent the last 25 years intimately familiar with Grand Canyon.
One of the most unusual rock types in Grand Canyon is diabase. In the field, we see evidence that diabase was once a very hot liquid that was intruded between the rock layers of the upper crust of the Earth. We see these very thick horizontal rock bodies called sills in the Grand Canyon. Diabase sills ought to be ideal for radioisotope dating for 3 reasons. The first characteristic of diabase sills that makes them an ideal candidate for radioisotope dating is that they were injected through a crack, a nozzle if you will, where friction and flow created mixing isotopic mixing is one of the requirements for radioisotope dating. A second characteristic of diabase sills that makes them an ideal candidate for radioisotope dating is that the sill is gravitationally segregated. The coarser, heavier minerals fell to the bottom and the lighter minerals floated to the top. This mineralogical separation is an ideal characteristic, especially for isochron dating. And a third characteristic of diabase sills that makes them an ideal candidate for radioisotope dating is that the diabase sill was squeezed into and between cold rock layers and allowed to cool. The cooling would occur rapidly and the crystals should read just a single age. For these reasons, diabase sills of Grand Canyon ought to be ideal candidates for radioisotope dating.
Now, I need to say right off the bat that you have to get permission to collect rocks in Grand Canyon. You can't just go out there and start picking them up yourself. And here's a cross-section of a Grand Canyon. This shows the Colorado River sliced down through where Grand Canyon occurs. And if you're standing up on the rim, this happens to be the north rim of Grand Canyon, but the south rim would be over here. We've kind of sliced it away so you could see down in the canyon. But if you look down in the canyon, you see almost a mile down into the bottom to the river where the Colorado River flows through. And the upper 4,000 feet or so of that is sedimentary rock that was laid down by the flood, the Genesis flood, we believe. And in addition to that, there's volcanoes that have spewed lava over the top of those down into the canyon. And in fact, we have evidence at some time in the past that lava was so thick it filled the Grand Canyon and backed the river up as like a dam, and it filled the thing completely to the top with water.
I didn't know that. That's
so it's really fascinating. But we're going to focus on some other issues here. These are the various types of sedimentary layers, but down near the bottom are also some sedimentary layers that are kind of tilted up. And between the layers, there was activity in the past that magma, basalts, and lavas flowed up from below where it had melted and squeezed up through the cracks into what are called dikes, the vertical flow layers, and horizontal ones called sills. And there's two particular areas that we want to emphasize. One is down near the very bottom of Grand Canyon is called the Bass Diabase, and it's in a sill. And then up in the Cardenas basalts, up a little bit higher. If we look at a vertical shot of Grand Canyon, we can see where this outcrops, because we're going to go down and collect samples of this igneous rock, this material that was at one time molten and then hardened into these layers. This is Grand Canyon coming down from the north and flowing down and turning west and going through the Grand Canyon National Park in this direction out to the west side. And down in the canyon, well, here's Bright Angel Trail right here, and the south rim of Grand Canyon where most people go to look over the edge. That's right here, this is the Grand Canyon Village. And Bright Angel Trail goes down, but at the very places in the bottom, these basaltic and igneous material has cropped out. So as you're bringing a raft down through the river, you can stop at these places and collect samples. Here's where the Cardenas basalts are on the eastern Grand Canyon, and the Bass Rapids Diabase Sill is out in this region here. We're going to talk about those, and then there's two other samples that we've collected as well. These materials are igneous, and you can date them using these isochron methods that we're going to be talking about. Here's a picture of what it looks like down in Grand Canyon. Now, one of the advantages of taking a raft trip down in Grand Canyon, and we've done this for many years now, is that when you collect your rock samples, you can bring them back onto the raft and then float them down and have the rafting companies ship them to you, instead of having to put them in a backpack and hike them all the way out.
Yeah, I like that better.
We've had a few volunteers that have come along on some of these trips and carried the rocks actually from some of the backcountry down to the river, and we call them our mules. And I reiterate, you got to get permission to do that. I've been down the canyon now probably 12 or 15 times, normally backpacking, but I've made several raft trips as well. And it's a beautiful sight to be able to go down into the river. There's another picture here, shows you a little bit more a close-up to some of how these formations outcrop down at the river. There's all kinds of various types of rock, but between the formations is where the igneous material is. And typically, you know, the rapids that are in Grand Canyon that people go down on the raft trips to go over and have a lot of fun, that's typically where these so-called sills crop out. And it's where the magmas come up, or the canyons that come in, and there's faults across.
And that's what's made the river shallow there and caused the rapids.
That's right, and there's all kinds of boulders and rocks in there, and it makes these pools where the rafts go over.
Sure.
So it's a really enjoyable thing to go down into canyon. Now, we've collected all kinds of rock samples, and Dr. Austin in particular has been the one that has spent a lot of time down in Grand Canyon collecting rock samples at specific outcrops. And we've done analysis on 4 different types of techniques. I've got a diagram that shows these. There are 4 different techniques here, and most people have probably heard of the uranium lead technique. These are the data that were collected by uranium lead. We've also done potassium argon, the data are over here, and rubidium strontium, and samarium neodymium. All those data are plotted on this diagram, and they're shown in colors. The Bass Rapids is shown in orange, or kind of a yellowish color actually. The Cardenas basalt is more of an orangish color. Something called the Brahma amphibolites is shown in blue, and then the Elves Chasm granodiorite, which is down near the western Grand Canyon, is shown in green. So you can see all of those. There's also some other distinctions here. There's 2 types of decay from these. There is alpha decay, and that uranium lead is an example of that, and the samarium neodymium. And a second type of decay called beta decay is over here the potassium argon and the rubidium strontium, or beta decay. And when you plot all these, you notice a considerable amount of difference here. Over on the left side of the diagram is the age estimated from this isochron dating technique in millions of years. So, for example, here we have 1,000 million years. That means that's a billion-year-old rock. The conventional method for estimating the age of these rocks, it has all kinds of assumptions built into it, but if you assume that that's there, you'll get estimates around 1 billion years, older or younger than 1 billion years. But they don't agree. And you notice the vertical lines through these data, those are the error bars. These 3 samples here are all from the same rock, and they should have exactly the same age. This estimate says that it's about 1 billion years old, plus or minus a small amount. Up here, it's almost 2 billion years old, plus or minus a certain amount, and this one's a little less than that with a smaller amount of error involved. That's what's called discordance. And all these data over here were from the same rock. This is from the same rock, and that's from the same rock as well. And here you've got tremendous differences.
The one's down to 800 million, and you've got one just under 2,000 million, which is 2 billion.
Yeah, this would
so
be
from
about
800 million to 2 billion, that's 12.
It's over a factor of 2.
Yes.
And that's a big difference, and particularly when you've got estimates that are very precise with those error bars. They should not be outside of those error bars.
So isn't this a big red flag saying something may be wrong with the whole method?
Yeah, something is not right here. Either the assumptions are not accurate or something else is going on. And we think that what's going on is accelerated decay has messed up this technique. Not only does the actual magnitude of the numbers that we see are completely out of agreement with Scripture, but they don't agree with each other, and we think the accelerated decay, which causes the age to agree with the Bible, also messes up this method of estimating the age.
You know, the first point that I would like to make, Doctor, is that the average person listening to our show, and especially I'm thinking about the young people who go off to the university and their professor with confidence tells them that we know the earth is old because we have these scientific methods that demonstrate without question how old the earth is. When we get under the hood and look at the method, we're finding out that they're guessing and they can't get within 1 billion years.
Well, they've actually made some assumptions that they don't tell you about.
And if you start with bad assumptions, you get bad conclusions.
Exactly. And the primary assumption they start with is that the rate of decay that we observe today for these various isotopes, like uranium turning into lead, has been constant throughout eternity. In other words, what we have measured today has always been that way. It's a principle of uniformitarianism. And if that's not correct, this method is not going to work. And we believe that's primarily the reason it doesn't work. It has not been constant.
One of the words that has come up with considerable amount of excitement from you, and I think reflected upon your whole group of eminent scholars that you worked with, is this term accelerated decay. But for folks who've just tuned in today, remind us again what that theory is.
Accelerated decay basically says that at some time in the past, in Earth history, the rate of decay of these isotopes, like uranium turning into lead, has been speeded up in a dramatic way. And we believe that happened during the Genesis flood, not caused by the flood, but associated with the flood.
And this is kind of new to your study, isn't it?
Yes, and it's a very important issue. It's very controversial, but we believe that the evidence for it is very strong.
This is really exciting. This is maybe the nexus of where the debate is going to center over the coming years.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, I do too.
Now, there's one more feature of this graph that I want to point out, and that's this dashed line that you see here. The way in which these data line up indicate that the age estimates from this technique actually are relatively low down here near a small atomic weight. You notice we plotted this as a function of atomic weight so that the elements, like uranium lead, has an atomic weight of 238. It's a very heavy element decaying into lead. And down at the lower end is our potassium 40, which is a much lighter element. These numbers tend to have a trend that runs through there in a parabolic shape. So we don't know why it does that yet, but we think that this is a hint as to why there's a disagreement here. So we're exploring what that relationship might be.
Some connection between atomic weight and rate of decay.
And possibly accelerated decay. That's
Okay.
what we're anticipating.
All right. Well, that's fascinating. We got to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to try to pull all this together, and I want to hear not only what this evidence is saying, but where is this leading us in the whole debate. So don't you go away. We'll be right back.
Creation versus evolution. You weigh the evidence. The human body. Complex circuitry. The human nervous system is the most remarkable electrical communication center ever designed. It regulates the actions of organs, monitors the senses, and controls one's thinking, learning, and memory capacity. The trillions of computations required for such coordination of complex circuitry is enormous. The truth is that scientists are constantly discovering that our nervous system's intricate workings are nothing short of a miracle. Today's guest on Origins, Dr. Larry Vardaman, is chairman of the Department of Astrogeophysics at the Institute for Creation Research's Graduate School. Through his ongoing research in atmospheric science, Dr. Vardaman has contributed much to the field of creation science. He also led the RATE team, a research project examining the age of the Earth. This has been documented in the DVD Thousands, Not Billions. For more information, contact the Institute for Creation Research, 1806 Royal Lane, Dallas, Texas, 75229, or call 1-800-337-0375, or visit the website www.icr.org.
We're back with Dr. Larry Vardaman, and Dr. Vardaman, I want to ask you, why is discordance so important to our whole debate?
Well, this is the conventional view of the age of rocks, and they particularly depend upon these dates. Radioactive dating is the basis of the whole idea of the age of the Earth.
Billions and billions.
The billions and billions are required for evolution.
Right.
But when you go and look at the actual dates, you find that the various techniques that they use for dating a single rock, whether it's the whole rock or minerals within the rock, it comes out with a whole bunch of different estimates for the age. And if they disagree, they happen to select one that they like and throw the others out. And you can't do that.
Very selective.
The real data says that there's a whole bunch of different ages that are estimated, and some of them are twice as much as the other, and you can't just do that.
So it kind of undercuts the authority of when they say this is this many billion years old.
Right. Their own data disagrees with that.
And that sort of implies that there's still an open field for us to have discussion about how old things really are.
That's right. And even more than that, it points out there's something wrong with the technique that they're using.
Yeah. That's so important for our people to understand because, as I said, usually when these things are presented, they're presented with authority, like we know exactly how old that is, and we don't know sometimes within a billion years by their own theory.
That's right.
The theoretical consideration of radioactive decay, explaining accelerated decay. Help us with that once more.
Okay, the theoretical considerations that we've approached for either alpha decay or beta decay, if we're going to suggest that the decay has been accelerated in some way, we need to at least understand a little bit more about how that may have occurred. Now, we haven't got the final answer on this, but we've got some ideas that if you adjust certain parameters or variables within the nucleus of an atom, it will change the decay rates. And because of that, we're encouraged to believe that we're not just suggesting a wild idea, that there's some basis for it. Now, I have to say that it's only theoretical at this point. There's very limited experimental work that's been done. We haven't done any of that. It's very, very expensive. Even the largest labs in the world, it's very expensive for them to do it. But there's some of that being done now. Based on the fact that we've suggested this, there seems to be more and more research being reported in the literature of other people exploring the possibility of accelerated decay. Now, one of the reasons they do this is because if you could have a way of accelerating decay, you can get rid of nuclear waste. So there's a financial reason for suggesting this as well as our theoretical considerations. But I think with time, there's more evidence, both experimentally and theoretically, that this is going to happen.
You know, I have to chuckle because for many, many years, the whole creation evolution debate, creationists were always presented as the religious, superstitious people who didn't understand science. And now we're talking about wells in the nucleus of an atom. And the more research we have, the more it seems to validate that science really is supporting creation.
Well, we have scientists who have degrees from prestigious universities and have the capability of exploring this science and are attacking this problem with the expertise that's needed to do it.
Where do you see the accelerated decay debate going in the next decade?
Well, I think this is a major issue, and it's obviously very controversial. We on the RATE project were reluctant to suggest it at first because we thought that it was really out there, that it really wasn't going to be accepted, and we didn't really have the basis for suggesting it other than a wild theory. But as we worked our way through the data, we found at least 3 pieces of evidence that are almost irrefutable that this kind of a process has occurred. Now, we don't understand how yet, and it may be that we'll never know, because I believe that God was supernaturally involved in causing this process to occur. And whenever God is supernaturally involved, you can't really do science per se to understand it. You can get hints about it, but you may never be able to get to the final answer.
And we should be encouraged that the reaction from the scientific community at large, at least from a significant part of it, has been to say we need to look into this, not to laugh at you and say this is irrelevant.
That's right. My assumption was that we were going to basically be laughed at dramatically, and we haven't been. In fact, there has been conventional scientific laboratories and scientists who've explored this as well.
One of the exciting dimensions of that is that it's going to be funded, because if this could be proven true, it'd be a way to do away with nuclear waste.
That's right.
That's really exciting. Folks, as we close our show today, I just want to thank Dr. Vardaman and these 8 brave scientists that he's worked with for 8 years to do this kind of research. It thrills my heart, it literally buoys my soul to see that we have men with these kinds of gifts and talents and ability, committing them to God, seeking the truth, and finding that the truth is validating God's Word. And always remember this, it's God's view that He created you, and that should be your worldview too. I hope you'll ponder what Dr. Vardaman has shared with us and dig into the truth until we see you again next time here on Origins. God bless you till then. Dr. Vardaman, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for watching this edition of Origins. If you'd like a copy of the PowerPoint information presented today, you can download a PDF file of program number 816 from our website at www.originstv.org. Or for a DVD of this series, send a $12 donation to cover shipping and handling and write to Origins Program, number 816, Cornerstone Television, Wall, Pennsylvania 15148.
Origins is made possible by the faithful prayers and the financial support of you, our Cornerstone Television family.